Welcome to Writing Westward. My name is Wes, and this week we're talking about Superman and the Batman. Before we get started, I will be spoiling the Superman and the Batman movie if you haven't seen them yet, so if you care about that sort of thing, go watch them first. Superman and the Batman are both projects that came after or during the implosion of Zack Snyder's DC Extended Universe, and they both occupy a very similar cultural niche defined by a return to the classic characterizations of both of these heroes. Okay, now that the spoiler warnings are out of the way, I obviously don't mean Superman 2025 and The Batman are literally the same movie. They're tonally and stylistically different movies that tell different stories with different themes, but they do occupy the same countercultural niche. And what I mean by that is that both of these films will fill a growing audience demand for a return to the more classical aspects of the Batman and Superman characters and their more classic stories, while still telling these classic stories in new, fresh ways. Let's start with James Gunn's Superman movie. The Superman movie, in a lot of ways, gave audiences a Superman that's been missing from mainstream portrayals of the hero for the better part of a decade, replaced by adaptations that go for a more modern and gritty tone, or just straight up explore the idea of Superman being evil. I've seen some fellow fans attribute Injustice: Gods Among Us, a game that dropped in 2013, where Batman and a group of ragtag DC heroes are resistant fighters fighting against an evil fascist regime headed by Superman, as the start of this evil Superman phenomenon. The idea of an evil Superman figure almost certainly predates Injustice, but for the purposes of this video, we'll say Injustice popularized the idea for the modern era. Injustice was a good game that I remember very fondly, but I don't think that storyline would have hit the same today, after so many years of the evil Superman archetype. Speaking of the archetype, we've also seen the evil Superman character archetype appear in other popular media, like with Omni-Man and Invincible and Homelander in The Boys.
Yummers.
This brings me to the most mainstream recent adaptation of Superman, besides James Gunn's, obviously. Zack Snyder's Superman. Zack Snyder's Superman was never evil, but they did choose to adopt a darker tone for the character that wasn't really reflective of the classic Superman characterization. Snyder loved to use Superman as an allegory for a god/messiah figure, and had the character feel the melodramatic weight of this power and the lives he was unable to save, or in the case of his father, chose not to save. This Superman wasn't evil, but did have a bit of an interesting mean streak. For instance, when someone insulted him in a coffee shop once, he used his powers to impale the guy's truck with like 20 massive logs. And yeah, he never hurt the guy, but you stop to think about it for a second, this dude's insurance premium's going up, he's probably getting fired, it's probably ruined this dude's life for at least a few months. And that's not even mentioning the mass urban destruction during the later grandiose action set pieces that make you feel like you're actually watching gods clash, with no regard for mortal casualties. When you compare that to James Gunn's Superman, this new Superman is kind to the point of saving everyone, including even dogs and squirrels. And before anyone says anything in the comments, yes, I know James Gunn changed the source material, specifically with his Kryptonian parents, but I think this rendition of Superman is truer to his historical characterization. A force for good that wants to save everyone he can at the end of the day. Kindness is more important to this Superman than flashily defeating villains, and I found that extremely refreshing. And after talking to friends and other Superman fans, they also seem to find that dynamic refreshing, after years of evil and/or morally conflicted broody Supermans or Superman archetypes. You've likely heard similar points about James Gunn's Superman movie, but what about Matt Reeves' The Batman? Well, I think the same analysis can be applied here too, but to a less obvious extent. So, let's start where it's most obvious. Snyderverse Batman. This character received a very similar Snyder-style makeover as Superman. They made him more gritty, which in Batman's case means he kills people, is even more violent, and is even more depressed. They also depict him using guns, but that's a dream vision thing, so I digress. Personal nitpick, but Batman's been my favorite superhero for years now. I'm basic, I know, and it feels wrong to see Bruce Wayne use guns. And in Matt Reeves' The Batman, Batman, while still naturally violent to criminals, doesn't use guns or lethal force on said criminals. He also goes on a whole character arc about learning to lead the citizens of Gotham, instead of just enacting vengeance on Gotham's underworld. Yes, the Batman movie is still gritty, especially in its portrayal of Gotham, but there's an increased focus on Batman's character and arc that alleviates the overly gritty take used with Snyder's Batman. Snyderverse Batman also doesn't really have as much of an opportunity for character arcs and growth, because Snyder was trying to establish the entire Justice League in the Snyderverse, not just Batman. Even in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, arguably one of the best superhero movies ever made, Batman's character arc isn't anywhere near the central focus of the film, like it might have been in older renditions of the character, like in the comics or in the Batman animated TV series. The Dark Knight is an undeniably amazing film, but Batman, while still good, gets overshadowed by Heath Ledger's Joker, Harvey Dent, Commissioner Gordon, and the heavy themes of chaos, good, and evil that they represent. Yes, Batman sacrifices himself and his reputation at the end of The Dark Knight to save the city from the Joker's influence, but he likely would have done that at any point in the film. Even before this, he's willing to turn himself in and give up his secret identity before Harvey Dent takes the fall for him. So it's not as much a character arc as much as Batman always being noble in this movie. There's a lot of positives to be found in Matt Reeves' The Batman, from the tantalizing portrayal of Gotham to the intrigue of Paul Dano's Riddler. But chief among the positives of this movie for me is Batman himself, namely the character arc he goes on. When we start the film, we see that Batman is new and unsure of what he's doing, if he's really making a difference. He talks about being a symbol, but not of hope, of fear. As the story progresses, the Riddler appears and commits politically motivated murders while leaving clues for the Batman. We eventually find out the Riddler is doing this because he's a Batman fan, actually. His message mirrors Batman's when one of the Riddler's followers says the "I'm vengeance" line back to him. To the Riddler, he's providing the same heroic service as Batman, just more permanently by murdering the people he deems to be the problem with Gotham. Batman is, of course, disgusted by this comparison because he doesn't brutally murder people in ways that remind me of the Saw franchise. This is the catalyst for Batman to stand for more than just vengeance, to stand for hope and safety for Gotham citizens. His arc is fully actualized when Batman leads Gothamites to safety from the Riddler's act of eco-terrorism that floods the city. He's become a guiding force for citizens, a symbol of hope instead of just vengeance. It feels like it's been years since mainstream adaptations gave us a Batman story where his character arc is done so well and is so central to the story. That's ultimately a big part of why I think this film resonated with audiences so well. It filled a gap left by recent mainstream portrayals of the Caped Crusader. Both directors, James Gunn and Matt Reeves, were able to sense the growing demand for a return to form, so to speak, and capitalize on that demand with Superman and the Batman. Because both of these films were coming after Snyder's grittier vision had largely been cemented, they adopted similar directions in the way they both make characters less gritty and more focused on arcs in Batman's case, and a return to kindness in Superman's case. While Matt Reeves' The Batman and James Gunn's Superman are vastly different projects, they both take advantage of audiences' desire for a return to the fundamentals of these characters after a decade or more of experimentation. I know James Gunn doesn't have any plans at the moment of recording to bring in Robert Pattinson's Batman to the DCU, but I think it would be so interesting to see these two characters interact. What do you guys think? Should James Gunn bring the Batman into the DCU or leave it be? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm a YouTuber, you know what I want. Do the things if you feel like it. See you next time.